Hi, I'm Ala Idrisova and I'm hosting this Inspiration Through Inclusivity podcast. It's Friday and I'm glad to see you with us. Good morning, Stuti.
Hey.
Welcome. Can you
Thanks.
please introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Stuti Sethi. I'm a director at Strategy which is PwC's strategy consulting arm. I'm based in the Netherlands. My focus is on sustainability for retail and consumer goods companies. But the reason I'm here is because I grew up around the world, and throughout my life, I've always seen the contrast between how women are treated in India versus how things happen in the West. And it's always inspired me to have an interest in how we can make things more equal for women across the world. And in addition to that, I'm a mum. I have two kids, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. That's pretty much me.
Thank you. It's fantastic. I hear that, as you mentioned, that you very feel strongly about DI and also being a mom.
Yeah.
But a consulting, it's a quite demanding environment. Can you tell me a bit more how in your
Yeah.
company specifically you retained female talent?
Yeah, so I joined Strategy in the Netherlands almost 8 years ago. At the time, we had very few women in the leadership team. I'd say almost none in the partner director team. And today I'm very proud to say that we're at about 30% representation, and we have an ongoing target to increase that as well. We are basically the strategy consulting arm within PwC. So we work strategy consulting hours, which means also some travel and trying to manage that balance where we don't always have the full flexibility in our calendars. Yeah.
But what is your secret? Because you are a mom,
Yeah.
a busy professional, and this schedule.
Yeah, so I think it's really been the support of the company in that whole process. And I want to talk about a very specific time that this all happened. So what I saw was that most of the time when my colleagues or my female colleagues would become managers, they would potentially have their first child. And the manager role is perhaps one of the most difficult ones in a consulting firm because you become responsible for the client, for your team, for making sure the partners are happy, for managing budgeting, risk processes, etc. And if you add to that mix a child, suddenly it seems like it's not going to be possible to make everything fit because your ability to work basically round the clock to get anything done completely disappears. So what happened in our firm was that typically women would get to that stage and essentially at some point they would go, I can't do this, and they left. What our firm did, and particularly our people partner and our chief people and culture officer, they came together. So this was a man and a woman. They came together and they said to us as a manager cohort at the time, there was, I think, 4 or 5 of us. And they said, it's really important for us to retain women in this organization. And we want to help you become directors and partners here. So we want to set up a group where you help us, and together we figure out what are the solutions we need to help women stay in the firm and become successful. I want to add to that. The funny thing about consulting is that it's not an easy solve, right? It's very difficult to get women in externally at the partner director level because if they've already left, it's because they found it too hard and they've said, I don't want to go back to that life. So they don't usually come back. So this sort of internal promotion is really critical. And the fact that they brought together this group, it made us feel really supported and important and special, but it also allowed us to together come up with some of the things we would need to be successful.
Now I'm very curious, like what things you come up with, because it seems it's working.
Yeah. So and it is. We have a very strong pipeline of associates, senior associates, and managers with children, female managers with children, male managers with children, senior associates, everything. Right? It's really nice. We now have a Children's Day, which is amazing when you see like all these kids show up to a strategy consulting office. But anyway, that's a side point. Look, I think I want to focus on one specific initiative within this sort of team that we created, and that is what we call the must-have conversations. So this came out of the experience of myself. I was at the time I was one of the few pregnant managers, and another manager who got pregnant pretty soon after me. What we found was that the firm was very supportive, and coming from this history of booze, it's a very entrepreneurial organization. The attitude is, hey, we want to help you be successful. You tell me what you need and we will help you make it happen. Great, right? Really, really helpful. Except that when you're a first-time mother and you have no first-time mothers around you, you have no idea what you need. And on top of that, your hormones are going all over the place. So you don't even know if you know the right things. And, there's a difference between what you need, what you want, what you can ask for. And it's hard to tell how those things all fit together. So what we found was that what the partners and the directors felt was a very open and inviting conversation really wasn't working for us because we just had no clue what the options were. And so what we did, and maybe actually before I go there, I'll go to give you a bit more of a specific example, right? So when I was pregnant, the partner I worked with said, hey, we have a project for you, but I understand that you're pregnant and maybe you don't want to do it. So I felt like I kind of got a bit of a binary option in a way, not because it was intended that way, but because nobody knows any better, right? They just assume, hey, you either want to do the project or you say it's too hard and you don't. But I was still really ambitious. I really wanted to do the project, but I wanted to do it in a way that would work. And I was afraid about what could I ask for and would the firm be willing to invest in me? Because, again, first time in this organization, right? And in the end, I said, hey, what about if I do the project, but you help me by giving me an additional junior on the team? We talk about hours. We figure it out so that it works for me. And the team was very supportive. The project went very well. The client was very happy. And I stayed with the firm because it worked. The firm was willing to make the investment in me to help me get through the pregnancy period, which can be pretty difficult. And I was lucky. I actually had a pretty easy pregnancy, right? But it made a really big difference. It meant I stayed through that and I felt so supported that I stayed for the coming years as well to have my first child and then my second child. And I think the same could be said for some of my colleagues. But that's sort of the experience that led to the policies. But the policy itself was essentially to say that the minute that you inform HR that you're pregnant, we put in place a support process through that. So you get assigned essentially a coach to help you with thinking through what are some of the options you want to implement. So it's not binary. We don't sort of say, hey, you can work only 60% and you do this and you don't do that. It's really a process of designing what works for you because every pregnancy is different. Every woman is different. Everybody's needs are very different. And that process of having somebody who's sort of your support through that experience has been very helpful. And I think the key ingredient is it's a partner who's there to do that job because it means that they're able to sort of say to their partner colleagues, hang on a minute, I need you to help me with making these allowances for this particular person's condition or situation.
Yeah, it seems very good support, especially like when you're pregnant and your hormones going up and down. So I think like it's very important. But what happened after?
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I mean, is it you have a baby and then you're back on clock like a regular consultant?
No. So it's a process. So it really goes from that pregnancy period through to also when you're actually on maternity leave. So we talk about, hey, do you want to stay in touch? Do you not want to stay in touch? What support would you like while you're away to feel involved in the business? And then when you come back, we continue to have those conversations to really monitor and make sure that you're landing well. And so again, it's creating those allowances, whether it's part-time work, full-time work, not doing recruitment or only focusing on a particular type of work or whatever it might be, till you sort of feel, hey, this is working. I can come back to my normal duties as such.
And this conversation, is it with HR, right? Like, and is it for any level of for female organizations?
It's essentially from the moment of pregnancy, we start those discussions. And as soon as you share it, because obviously, I mean, I didn't, with my first pregnancy, I was so afraid of, miscarriage and all these kinds of things. I didn't even tell anybody I was pregnant till 20 weeks. But I think I got away with that because I'm very small, but most people can't do that, right? So it's honestly, it makes it more encouraging to even share that news earlier because people start helping you with the process much earlier as well.
I'm curious because we Netherlands, right? Like, and we're speaking about strategy and Netherlands. And
Yeah.
if you have the same policies in another countries, maybe with the culture less open, because Netherlands, of course, very famous for directness.
Yeah.
Would you think this conversation or this strategy will be working in some other regions as well?
Well, I mean, it's been so effective in the Netherlands that our German colleagues have also adopted it. They've made their own changes to it, of course. And even within PwC Netherlands, they've adopted some features of this approach because it really fits with our core values and the fact that we care about our people and we support them through big events, because becoming a mom is one of, at least as a woman, it's one of the biggest events you can go through, right? It's a total change in your role, your responsibilities, your attitudes in some ways. And maybe, one thing I want to add is that we found it so effective in helping women through this process that we actually started extending it to other situations. So, increasingly the workplace is not just about, a woman or a man becoming a parent, but it's a family issue, right? Or a family occurrence. So we also provide support to men in that situation now, and people who've been through, say, a particularly disturbing event, whether it's injury or a death in the family or whatever else it might be, because having that extra support and coaching to help you deal with a big event is really helpful.
No. And so I understand that this is a conversation, it's like must have this conversation, but as you mentioned, like it's become a part of your values. As female, want to work in consulting, I come to your company, and while recruiting process will be already can have this conversation saying that I'm planning to become a mother and I will be welcomed, so I shouldn't be afraid to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, one of the most powerful things was having a conversation with a young lady who was leaving the firm, of course, but that's okay. And I asked her, look, I knew she was a manager on the cusp of sort of potentially having children and all that kind of stuff. And I said to her, I just want to check, are you leaving because you feel like you can't be a mother here? And she said, absolutely not, because you've shown me you've done it. There's another director who's shown me it's possible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that in itself, for me, that was a real moment to say, this worked. What seemed impossible is no longer impossible. Yeah. And once you see more women and more parents, it creates a flywheel. And I want to say also for myself, actually, one of the reasons that I thought, hey, it must be doable was because I did see male partners and male directors who were either working part-time or were somehow managing to make work-life balance work. But somehow still or a lot of women feel they need that female role model for how it's done. Yep. And I think that has to do with how a lot of the time still in our society, women bear the load of sort of house care as well as work care.
Yeah, I think indeed that in Germany it's probably very different because I think that they have paternity leave, or like in other European countries. In Netherlands, it was not as common, but with these policies, I can see as well that it will be also encourage men to take more responsibility, while women also can continue to be successful in her career. So it's will be giving both equal opportunities.
Yeah, well, I think it's not so much the maternity leave and the paternity leave. Yeah. I think it's really more when you come back from that, right? Because when you reintegrate into the workplace as a parent, your priorities are different. Your ability to do both things next to each other changes. I mean, when your child is sick, somebody has to look after the child, and you can't. It's not like you can say, well, daycare, I'm sorry, I'm not coming to pick up my children. You have to have a phone call with your partner. You need to juggle agendas and say, okay, can you do this meeting? Can I do this meeting? And I think what we've done is we've made it safe to have that conversation and say, I'm not going to be able to make this meeting because I discussed it. On this case, my husband's meeting is more important. I need to be there. And then it's about sort of structurally embedding work-life. Right. And I know it's all blending together these days, but typically particularly in the Netherlands, right, people try to be home for bedtime.
True.
And, I've seen partners do that. And it also makes it then acceptable that we say, hey, between these two hours, we try not to have client meetings. It also helps the juniors because it means they have time to have dinner, go for a run, do some exercise. And I think that helps with creating a bit more of a balance, which you see that the younger generation, Gen Z,
Yes.
are also really keen on.
Stuti, you've mentioned like that you have in a company the people and culture officer.
Yes.
I didn't hear too often this role. Can you tell me a bit more what it actually
Yeah.
mean within your organization? What this person particularly responsible for?
Yeah. So I think I think it's probably Chief People and Culture Officer. I was
okay.
probably unfair there. This role, I think it's really evolved over time, and it's been critical to the changes that we've made. So in addition to making it, this diversity initiative around the must-have conversations, and as I said, organizing to really help women stay within the firm, we've also undergone a bit of a cultural transformation over the last 10 years, right? So this is partly because you see that younger generations are looking for something different. We see that work and life are constantly blending. So we're looking at ways that you can really make sure that you're showing care for people, because in our business, people are the core of the business. Healthy people means happy people, better work, and therefore more profitability, right?
Yes,
so,
of course.
Our Chief People and Culture Officer has been really critical to driving that change, to helping our senior leadership with also, being a part of that change and being the support for our juniors throughout this process of moving towards a different culture where, we're able to better deal with the needs of juniors and new generations as well.
I love it. I love it that HR, it's not just separately a human resource and hiring, but it's also you embodying it like a culture, and it's from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that change occurred over time, but it became so obvious that there was a core role being played by this person in driving that change and embedding it across all levels of our organization.
Love it. Well, I want to ask you something more personal, because I know that we are both, of course, met maybe first time or earlier, like in one of the INSEAD program on track.
Yeah.
And I see that within strategy and NL that you are having such a successful DI policies and initiatives, and how actually you maybe this learning you brought on track, which you are leading now. And maybe also tell us a little bit more about on track.
Yeah.
And then is it anything that you actually transfer? Yeah.
So I think maybe just to tell a little bit about what the On Track program is. I'm not in a leadership role. Let's be very clear. I think Michelle and Luce are really driving that for today. So I shouldn't take credit where it's not due. But essentially, Hanneke Dinger and one of her colleagues, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name right now, set up the On Track program, which is really to help young mothers stay on course. Because while it is very challenging in consulting, it's challenging everywhere for women to sort of reintegrate and find that balance. We know that women's pay typically drops significantly after children, and that comes down to some of the societal issues around work life, work responsibility and household responsibility. But anyway, what the program does is it essentially brings together young mothers, typically a group of 7 to 9, and creates a peer learning environment in addition to actually helping women with having access to other women mentors who have been through sort of that rough and tough phase of getting through the having children and then being successful in their careers. So it's sort of twofold. Personally, I found the peer mentoring very helpful because it allowed you to see, how other young mothers are dealing with the same problems that you have, and there's something about just being in that moment and going, oh my God, my schedule just doesn't work. How do I balance this? What do I do? And we have a group of people who are all from very different backgrounds, which really helps you with bringing a different lens to your problems as well. And I think the program was a year long. It's now 3 years later, and we still meet up once a month. And honestly, it's friendship now. And it's been really, really powerful to have a group of very ambitious women who are going through the same thing. So I think particularly in the Netherlands, it's very helpful because, I both love this about Dutch culture, but I find it very difficult as well that women tend to go down to 4 days a week. They end up with primary responsibility for care. So if you are an ambitious woman, you're not the norm by any measure, and it's almost frowned upon in society. So being able to find a group of women who are like you in that space and want to be more successful or whatever that means, they want to have a high-powered position, it helps with sort of finding ways to balance that out. And then, of course, having the senior mentorship from women who've been through it all is really helpful to, get that perspective of it will all be okay. But sometimes they don't remember what it was like to be in the trenches and make that decision around, hey, buy a whiteboard and put on the whiteboard exactly who is doing what. Really practical tips that
I remember that one.
make
Yes.
your life easier. Yeah, we all have a whiteboard now. I heard the next level up is, shared Google calendars and joint email addresses and
Yes.
so on. I haven't implemented that yet, but, it helps you go beyond, because I think often, you get the advice, hey, outsource everything.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? What should I outsource? What should I keep? How do I decide what my life should look like? They're really individual choices.
It's actually like sound to me like must-have conversation, but just in another surrounding, right? But here you have like-minded women who also going through the same, and you can share. I love it. But,
we also share our work challenges, and often you have situations, and again, having this group of people who are all coming from different backgrounds. For me, it was an eye-opener because when you're in consulting, you really start thinking like a consultant. You apply your process structured approach to everything. So when you have, I think one of our ladies is an entrepreneur. She just thinks about the problem in a completely different way.
Yeah.
It really opened my eyes. It really plays to that value of INSEAD as well, right? The power of diversity in thought and in leadership.
Yes. Last question. What is next? So you're doing already a lot outside of your work with On Track, and still, of course, within your strategy on NL. And what is next for you?
Yeah, I think we got through the initial hurdle now of how do we keep women through pregnancy and having young children, and also keeping parents, so the young men as well. The next question is, how do you really make it sustainable and self-managing? So I haven't gotten there yet, but one of my colleagues is, her kids are a little bit older, so they're sort of 6 and 8 or something like that. And it presents a different set of challenges again, right? Each time you do this, it's new, and maybe it gets harder because we all live in nuclear families now. You don't always have the support around you to go, oh, this is how I did it. So I think for us, it's really saying, how do you really make it systemic? And there's a portion which is within our control, but I think there's still a big societal change that's needed around this. Our society and our lives are still structured around a 40-hour work week. Now we've even got the return back to offices everywhere, 40-hour work week, an assumption that, there's somebody at home. I mean, school finishes at 3 p.m. How do you cater to that when you have two working parents? So I think the next step is really figuring out, what do we do to really fit within these societal constraints, and are there spaces to change this 40-hour work week, man working, woman at home, or vice versa situation that I think we're still in?
Yes, it's a good question. And I think...
I don't have the answers yet. I have some ideas, but we need to break some barriers and ceilings and so on to do that.
It's a good question for all of us. And let's see, maybe the next time in a year, we can have the conversation and we have more answers than questions.
I hope so.
Thank you so much, Stuti, and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, you too. Have a good one.
Great that you stay with us till the end. If you enjoyed our conversations, please subscribe. And I hope that you had enough inspirations and learnings to reflect over the weekend.